Good afternoon, beautiful people. My name is Dr. Alvin Logan Jr., and I am excited and humbled to be able to bring the land acknowledgement for you all today. This is a land acknowledgement that is germane to the Burke Museum. And as a practice, we give the land acknowledgement and also reflection. So that's what I'll be doing with my time here. The Burke Museum stands on the lands of the Coast Salish peoples, whose ancestors have resided here since time immemorial. Many indigenous peoples thrive in this place, alive and strong. And as a reflection today, I want to say first off, happy Black History Month. We celebrate Black history outside of the month of February, but inside of the month of February, I make sure everybody knows. I also want to take this moment to thank my ancestors, my elders, and all those who made it possible for not only myself, but a lot of the folks on this Zoom call to do the work that we do, to influence the people that we influence, and to make sure that the youth has an adequate path to achieve their own dreams. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Tiana, and thank you for allowing me to do land acknowledgement this morning.
Thank you so much, Dr. Logan. Hello, everyone. So grateful to be sharing this space with you and celebrate Black History Month here with Dr. Wilson Edward Reed. We're so looking forward to hearing his story and how he navigated academia and also learning a bit more about his book as well, Junebug. There will be a drawing at the end of this, so look forward to that at the conclusion. But I will go ahead and pass it over to Kimberly to start introductions.
Great, thank you. Well, everyone, as I begin introductions, I'd like to first just say that I'm grateful for today's presentation and excited to be learning with you in this space. So my name is Kimberly. My indigenous name is Kaya Ayoka Hollins. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm in the Continuum Learning Experience team over the QW Tower. And I'll pass it over back to Tiana.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Tiana Cole, pronoun she, her. I'm a program administrator at the Continuum College. I've been here for over a year now, so it's gone pretty quickly. And I'm also a member of the professional staff organization DEI committee. So looking forward to this collaboration with the Burke. And I will hand it over to Dr. Reed to introduce himself.
Hello there. I identify myself as Dr. Wilson Edward Reed, Junebug, Mississippi guy. So he's a fun guy and he loves sharing stories. Junebug.
Great. Thank you so much. And I'll go ahead and pass it to Kimberly to introduce our conversation today that will be focused on intergenerational wisdom and also to include a grounding exercise as well.
All right, thank you, Tiana. So before we begin, we'd like to just briefly share how we've designed today's presentation. And on the next slide, we'll go into that. So for today's presentation, we thought it'd be appropriate to begin with the grounding exercise and then move into the themes of today. So I'd like to first invite you, if you're able, to participate in a quiet space. Take a moment to look at the photo on the slide in front of you. And imagine yourself walking along this path. Now I invite you to close your eyes or gently gaze away from the screen. Try to imagine how the temperature would feel on this path. Is it warm? Is it cold? Is it hot? Do you hear any particular sounds that resonate with you, near or far, or inside? And who would be the person waiting for you at the end of that path? What would they say or do when you arrive? With your eyes still closed, is your curiosity focused more so on the path or on the person on that path? As you quietly reflect on this, take a moment to take a few deep breaths at your own pace And when you're ready, go ahead and open your eyes. Thank you for participating. We'd first like to begin with an Ubuntu saying that says, I am because we are. We're grateful to share some of our favorite leaders that span the African diaspora. Many of ancestors and leaders of today that embody social justice, freedom, and wisdom that we often forget about as times become less or more challenging. Today's themes for the presentation include the following: an exploration of past, present, and future Black leaders that include revolutionaries who embody this justice. These themes are rooted in intergenerational wisdom, first centering our elders, our youth, and adults. We've chosen selective writings, poems, and images and quotes to help bring to life what was, what is, and what is still to come. Our past. This is a quote by Maya Angelou. In the photo, she is standing next to James Baldwin. Jimmy Baldwin was a whirlwind who stirred everything and everybody. He lived at a dizzying pace, and I loved spinning with him. Curiosity that sparks ahead, Maya Angelou, born in 1928, a singer, dancer, journalist, civil rights activist, poet, and screenwriter. And she says, we put surviving into our poems and into our songs. We put it into our folk tales. We dance surviving in Congo Square in New Orleans. We put it in our pots when we cooked pinto beans. We wore it surviving on our backs. When we clothed ourselves in the colors of the rainbow, we were pulled down so low we could hardly lift ourselves, each other. So we knew if we wanted to survive, we had better lift our own spirits. So we laughed whenever we got the chance. James Baldwin, 1924, American writer, civil rights activist, notable book, The Fire Next Time. I don't know what most white people feel. I can conclude what they feel from the state of their institutions. I don't know if white Christians hate Negroes or not, but I know that we have a Christian church that is white and a Christian church which is Black. I don't know if the Board of Education hates Black people, but I know the textbooks they give my children to read and the schools we have to go to are different. Unflappable. Nelson Mandela, 1918. South African anti-apartheid activist and politician. Served as the first president of South Africa from 1994 to 1999. The arbitrary and meaningless test to decide Black from colored or colored from white often resulted in tragic cases where members of the same family were classified differently, all depending on whether our child had a light or darker complexion. Where one was allowed to live and work could rest on such absurd distinctions as the curl of one's hair or the size of one's lips. No one is born hating another person because of their skin color, or his background, or his religion. If they can learn hate, they can be taught to love. Nelson Mandela.
Thank you so much, Kimberly, for highlighting those exceptional revolutionary Black leaders. We are moving into our present Black leaders of today that we believe have redefined history and continue to inspire us to move forward and to bring liberation for our community and other marginalized communities. A quote from Angela Davis to start: "You have to act as if it were possible to radically transform the world, and you have to do it all the time." So our first theme that we wanted to highlight was resilience for our present leaders. And Ruby Bridges is someone that comes to mind. She was the first child to integrate into a formally segregated school in New Orleans on November 14th, 1960. And here are a few quotes that she shared. "Every day I would show up and there were no kids, just me and my teacher in my classroom. Every day I would be escorted by marshals past a mob of people protesting and boycotting the school. This went on for a whole year. I remember what it was like at age 6, not really understanding what was going on around me, but having all these grown-up thoughts running through my head about what I was facing, why this was happening. The majority of my work the past 20 years has been about the power of children, how we as adults underestimate them." Moving forward into resistance. Some leaders that come to mind are first Angela Davis. As mentioned before, her quote, "You have to act as if it were possible to radically transform the world, and you have to do it all of the time." She was an activist, philosopher, and academic who pursued justice through resistance. She became the third woman ever placed on the FBI's top 10 most wanted fugitives list for her involvement in the Black Power movement and Black Panther Party, but was acquitted and continues to advance social justice efforts through her scholarly work. And a few quotes that she shares on resistance and the pursuit of justice throughout her career: "People's homes were bombed, synagogues were bombed, other churches were bombed. People think of that as a single event, but it was more indicative of the pervasive terror at that time in Birmingham. I experienced it as a deeply personal assault, and it was a little while before I could stand back and think about the larger impact of it, the way it represented an effort to wipe out the resistance of youth. I think it was probably one of the moments that helped me find that path." And moving forward into discomfort. Ibram Kendi was someone that came to mind. He is one of the most notable anti-racist scholars of our time, and he shares, "The heartbeat of racism is denial, and really the heartbeat of anti-racism is confession." Named one of the 100 most influential people in the world by Time magazine, he is one of the world's foremost historians and leading anti-racist scholars, reshaping our conversations on race through his work and continuing to disrupt systems and confront the status quo. Some of his notable works are Stamped from the Beginning. If you haven't had a chance to view that, it's one of the greatest documentaries that I've seen. And some of the quotes that he shares are, "I'm certainly not trying to make people feel comfortable or uncomfortable. I'm trying to tell the truth. I'm trying to provide evidence, and I'm trying to provide clarity." And moving forward into our last present leader is Ava DuVernay, who is a revolutionary in filmmaking. Documenting history through film, she has revealed how the arts are a vehicle for activism and is the highest grossing Black woman director in American box office history. Some of you may have heard of her new film, Origin, that has received critical global acclaim. Fantastic film that I've not had a chance to see yet, but I have read the book, so highly recommend you all check that out. And also 13th, which is another fantastic documentary she's done. And she shares, "If you're doing something outside of dominant culture, there's not an easy place for you. You will have to do it yourself." And moving forward into our next topic, I will hand it back over to Kimberly to discuss our future revolutionary leaders.
Sure, thank you. For this segment, we wanted to have some audience participation. So if you can please either unmute yourself one at a time by raising your hand, the icon on Zoom, or feel free to throw a Black leader that you resonate with into the chat. We'd love to share that with everyone. Michelle Obama, thank you. Yes, keep it coming. Claudine Gay, Michelle, Jacob Lawrence, Michelle Nichols, Malcolm X, Marcus Garvey, Nikita Oliver. Oh, she sounds local poet. That's what's up. Dr. Gail Christopher. Yes. And I'll throw one into Resma Minicum. Alexis Palingams. Barack Obama, of course. Octavia Butler, yes, known for the book The Wild Seed. Yes, Ta-Nehisi Coates, absolutely. Shonda Rhimes. Reverend Angel Kayota Williams. Yes, another loco. Love it. Love the blend of near and far. Alex Haley. Yes, N.K. Jemisin. Yes. Lovely. Trisha Hershey. Okay. Marley Diaz. Love it. I like how we're spotlighting people that are loco and they're more well-known because it really is a melting pot. And leaders are budding like right before our eyes in everyday spaces just like this. Amanda Gorman. Yes. Can we get maybe 2 more? I'll throw in one of them and say Maestro Silvio. He is a capoeira teacher of several years from Brazil, and he teaches Angolan capoeira locally here in Seattle. Oh, lovely. Patricia, and the last name is pronounced Egawatu. Amanda Sales, of course. Awesome. Thank you guys for participating. All right. Awesome. I'm going to pass it back to Tiana to introduce our honorable guest speaker.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. And thank you all for sharing those amazing Black leaders in the chat. I will just go ahead and pass it off to Dr. Reed to share about his journey. We're just so excited to hear more about your story and also follow that up with the Q&A as well at the end. So Dr. Reed, I'll hand it over to you.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be here today. It's great. I would like to share that I graduated from the University of Washington, bachelor's degree and a master's degree. And I came up way back in the day from Vicksburg, Mississippi. And I rode a Greyhound bus from Vicksburg, Mississippi to Seattle. And we called Mississippi back in the day Bigfoot country. Anyway, I escaped Bigfoot country to come to Seattle. And I didn't know what was at the other end of that Greyhound bus. But when I arrived, my folks were like, okay, you got to get a job. And it took me 5 days riding the bus. And I'm like, I need to rest. And they're like, no, you got to get up and go find a job. So actually, through some help from my relatives, I was able to get a job at Boeing. I went back to my old mainstay, found a part-time job at Kentucky Fried Chicken. And one of my relatives said, oh, there's a program out there at the University of Washington we heard about in the newspaper. You need to check that out. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to get lost trying to find it. I don't have a car. My uncle's like, boy, go down there and get on the other side of the street and ride north. And I said, I'm going to get lost. He said, don't worry. When you're coming back, get on the other side of the street. So here I was a couple of days in from Mississippi and ended up finding the EOP program at the University of Washington. And my backstory is pretty amazing. I went to segregated schools at every point in my early career. I didn't have kindergarten. We just went first to the first grade, segregated. Meant Black only, right? High school, Black only. Junior college, Black only. So I arrived in Seattle. I think I jokingly said I was majored in flag rag football, biz whiz, and looking at girls that would say, get out of here, you're a corny country guy. So I arrived with a, I don't know, 2.3 or whatever, and would eventually go up to a 3.7 during a bachelor's and a master's. And later on, through all the stuff I went through in Mississippi, was able to earn 2 more degrees. So I became a criminologist, political scientist, and a community activist. I'd just like to thank the people that at EOP program that saw a way to help kids like me that were hungry for a quality education. Okay, so I would like to spend a few minutes sharing the bus. What was it like for Junebug getting on the first bus he had ever been on, heading to his first segregated school? And I want to use a couple of words, and I want to define them before I get into it. Jim Crow was actually legalized segregation. And you can Google it and find out a little bit more about it. But Jim Crow was something that came up in the 1880s, where this man saw a black man out back dancing and having a good time. And the white man decided, you know what? I'm going to use this for a business idea. And he became a man that painted himself black, and went around the country, dancing and partying like a black guy. And at the time, white people thought he was funny. Black people didn't think it was funny. However, Jim Crow became legalized segregation in the southern states. So Junebug grew up in something akin to Southern Africa, apartheid, apart, hate, apart, segregated institutions. So Junebug is getting ready to ride off on his first bus to King's Elementary. Mama told me if I walked up the road and stood there, the bus would come and get me. But it ain't here, and I'm starting to worry. What if the bus driver forgets about me and I miss my first day of the first class at King's? I feel all jumpy inside, like I got a belly full of grasshoppers. I know I'm supposed to get on the little yellow bus. The big yellow bus takes the white kids to their school. The big yellow bus is shiny and new, and the little bus is old and rickety. But Mama says we're lucky to have a bus at all. Some places the colored kids have to walk to school, even if it's far away. And the big bus is full of white kids who roll past us, standing on the side of the road, and splashes mud on us. And they call us names, and they scream at us. The white kids holler out the window and call us bad names that Mama and Grandma say nobody should use. I hear it. I hear the bus. The bus is coming. I pull up. It pulls up in front of me and slows to a stop. Now I feel excited and scared instead of worried. The grasshoppers in my belly are turning somersaults. This is the life of Junebug as a little guy. This should have been the nicest day of his life, but instead, he's got grasshoppers he's dealing with. I climb onto the bus. Mr. Johnson from church is the driver. He says, "Good morning." And I say it back, but it comes out soft and shy. Junebug. Junebug is basically, as we call it down home, shamefaced it. Here's a picture of Junebug's family. This is Daddy right in the middle, Grandma off to the far left. Mama Sally is the leader of our family here, far left. Daddy's smiling, all of them, everybody's smiling, and they love each other, and they're wonderful people. So each person there had a story for little Junebug as he was growing up. So there's family love, segregated state of Mississippi. The movies were segregated, the schools were segregated, the cemeteries were segregated. Every aspect of life was segregated. So there was love inside the house, and there was Jim Crow, legalized segregation outside the house. Let's move on to the second one. This is Mama Sally, Grandma Sally. She was the leader of our family, an exquisite lady, smart, Christian, and kind, and had a wicked sense of humor. And when I would tell her jokes like, you know, they say you can live longer if you've got a great sense of humor. And she'd say, boy, get out of here. Anyway, she moved from Mississippi to Seattle, and she would live most of her life here in Seattle. All of the women that I'm showing you pictures of would live past 90 years old. The men, I never met any men that were grandfathers or anything, mostly grandmothers. So I was raised by my grandmother. Let's go on to the next slide, please. Thank you. This is Jim Crow. This is protests against Jim Crow. So here's a lady that's outside protesting. This is a very important picture, and it fits with the new book by Joy Reid about Magee Evers and Magee Evers' wife. And Merle Evers is from Vicksburg, Mississippi, which is where I grew up, outside in the country. Magee Evers was shot with an arm full of T-shirts and killed. And the T-shirts had written on them, Jim Crow must go. So Jim Crow was the whole base of the movement at that time. The idea was to protest these segregated institutions and create equity. And the big problem is African Americans paid taxes, but they did not get a return on their taxes. They were sequestered in segregated public institutions. The violence was unpredicted, and there were limited options in our community daily. Okay. This is Junebug's birth certificate. Now you notice we had a quote earlier from Nelson Mandela talking about the colored people in South Africa. Well, when Junebug was growing up, he grew up and was stamped, like Kendi talks about. He was stamped as a colored boy, a little old colored boy. Mama was colored, Daddy was colored, and Junebug was colored black. If you're black, get back. If you're brown, hang around. If you're white, you're all right. Junebug learned those things, those words, as a little kid growing up. Know your place, know your lane. Stay in your lane. Your lane is the black lane or the colored lane. And Junebug, it was stamped on his birth certificate at birth. Okay. Move on to the next one. Junebug would grow up, he would take that Greyhound bus, and he would, with support systems like Educational Opportunity Program and the like, support from Aunt Fran, Aunt Mary, Uncle Cecil, and earn 4 degrees. He was the proudest guy ever when he earned his PhD. He would transfer the knowledge that he gained from his parents, great-grandparents, and others to his son, Creighton Reed, who lives here in Seattle. Junebug would earn a PhD, that would be his fourth degree, and teach at 6 colleges across the United States. Junebug came to Seattle hungry, and he maintained his hunger for a quality education most of his life, and his son would earn high school degree and a community college degree, all the while maintaining a 3.7 GPA. Junebug is proud of his son, and he's a good guy. Thank you. Okay. Now, I'd like to spend just a few seconds closing out Junebug, Chapter 1, The Bus. Mama said to Junebug after the first day of school, "What did you learn today in school?" And Junebug says, "Oh, we just had a little fun. It was the first day, not too much was going on." Mama said to Junebug, "You only get out of it what you put into it. You're going to need to put more into your education as you move along." Mama left Junebug a philosophical foundation for which to educate himself and be proud of going to school and working with his teachers and community. Now, we can move on to this. Thank you.
I have not controlled the slides.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Reed. We really appreciate you sharing your story. And now I'll pass it over to Kimberly to share thoughts on healing modalities.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Reed. Before we wrap up, we wanted to share some knowledge of African-centered healing practices that spans many generations back. So what is African-centered approaches to healing? Well, there's 4 core areas of healing arts, and that includes drumming, dancing, storytelling, and silence. These are foundational practices found in Indigenous approaches to healing. As I mentioned earlier, generations back for our ancestors' ancestors, and so forth. And they're also similar to other Indigenous practices and cultures that are still around us today. A few examples of healing modalities include Congolese drumming, Angola capoeira, and the reason why these typically specified as Angola capoeira is because it has Afro-Brazilian roots. Next is samba, which is Brazilian-based, but also has African roots. Kemetic yoga, spanning from Egypt and Eastern philosophies. The griots of today's Ghana. And as you notice, there's many, many practices that are communal in nature. And as Bell Hooks says, rarely if ever are any of us healed in isolation. Healing is an act of communion. Bell Hooks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kimberly, for sharing those healing modalities. And before we actually wrap up, we do have quite a bit of time. So I did want to open it up for a Q&A from the audience. So feel free to throw in any questions that you have for Dr. Reed into the chat, or feel free to raise your hand as well. One of our first questions to start, Dr. Reed, if you'd be willing to share, what did resilience look like back in your young adulthood compared to now? You shared about growing up during the Jim Crow era and how you had internalized some of that discrimination that you had felt and had to try to figure out how to overcome that adversity and come into yourself and reclaim your Blackness. So would you be willing to share a bit about that resilience that you've developed over time?
Yes, I would. I think I gained this from my grandparents, my family folks. Mostly what I learned from my folks at an early age was do your best. Self-respect was the thing that was talked about most. That I should be self-respected, respect myself, and respect others. And one of the things that led to this resilience is actually people believe in me as a little kid. One of my uncles said something to me when I was really 4 or 5 years old. He said, "Come here, boy." And he rubbed my head and gave me a hug, and he says, "You're going to make something out of yourself. I don't know what it is, but here's a quarter." And he gave me a basketball. Well, it's pretty obvious that I didn't make it as a basketball player, but that resilience came from the hugs. It came from grandma, uh, the relatives. They would just hug me and say, "Come over here and get some sugar and give me a kiss." And I just thrived on that love that they passed on to me. So I think the best way to look at my story presently and in the last 15 or 20 years was me giving back. Each one reach one, each one teach one. So Junebug was, the kind of guy that got that love and he passed it on. My last job was working with some elementary school kids in Shoreline, which is 10 miles north. I ended up a guy that was, working with kids out on the playground. I ended up a crossing guard. I wanted to complete my book, and I took some time sharing my book with these young people. So reaching back, giving back, and most importantly, applying the Sankofa teachings. Reaching back to grab hold of some good stuff to share with my son and future generations. So Sankofa is going back to bring the best forward for you and your family and future generations. So I basically, even before I saw the bird, I was like, look, this makes sense to me that I'm paying forward to make a difference in the community. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much. And it's so inspiring to hear that you've used your lived experiences to uplift others and pour into others to allow them to thrive. So that is amazing.
Thank you.
And yeah, another question we had for you. Would you be willing to share the significance of your work as reflect on your journey and identity? And how would you define the evolution of your connection to your Blackness over time?
Whoa.
It's a big one. I know.
That's a big one.
Take your time.
Well, yeah, that's a big one. I think the best way to put this is that I learned that I had to be flexible. I learned that there would be some rough spots. I graduated from UW 2 times, and I was like flying high. I was like, boom, man. So I taught over at Wazoo, I taught at the University of Oregon, and I was like all over the Pac-10 and Pac-12. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna get some tenure and I'm gonna be a cool guy and all that. But it took me 25 or 30 years to finish that PhD. I ended up working in poverty programs, working at prisons, and some kind of way, I trained myself to become a criminologist. So I would say to everybody out there, the 50 people that are here today, 47, you have to set a goal. You have to work hard to reach that goal. But sometimes there are going to come some roadblocks, and you've got to learn how to deal with those roadblocks. You don't get pissed off at the roadblocks. You look at yourself and say, what's inside and how do I want to make a difference? So there were roadblocks for Junebug, divorces, all kinds of stuff. Graduation from my PhD, I was going through a divorce. And I was like, dang, man, this should be a big fun day. But I'll tell you, my sister, brother-in-law, 2 sisters came out to my PhD graduation at Northern Arizona. And my sister screamed, during graduation, "That's my brother." And I'm like, what the hell's wrong with these people? And about 200 students got up that I had over a couple of years and gave me a standing ovation at graduation. And I was crying like a baby and stuff. I'm like, dang, man, I don't want to be fronted out like this. But I'll tell you this, I think having a good sense of humor, being a hard worker. Grandma says, nobody ever died from hard work. You know what I mean? You don't work, you don't eat. So I grew up with this stuff and passed that stuff on to my son. And my son's like, Dad, now this is too deep. This is too deep. My son's 25. He's like, whoa, this is too much. You know what I mean? And he finally told me, I don't want to be like you. I'm like, geez, what do you mean you don't want to be like me? I'm a cool guy. He's like, I want to do my own thing. I'm like, okay. Go out and try it. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Dr. Reed. So here's a question I have for you, and maybe you've already reflected on this in some of the conversation, but I'm curious to know, why is intergenerational wisdom so important for today's times?
Wow. I think it's very important to know where you came from. Your parents. I keep the pictures. I keep the value system. What I find is tie myself to that value system. And at my last big professional job was teaching over at Seattle University. And basketball coach Cameron Dollar said, I want you to be an influence on these basketball players and other young people. And I found I became a model for that intergenerational kind of teaching. So I served as a teacher, community leader, and the like. But I think for young people today, we had COVID that hit hard, right? And it impacted young people big time, right? Having to look at a computer for a year and not be around their friends. I think it had a major impact on young people. My son was in the dorm at Shoreline Community College with 200 other students. And guess what? In the end, he moved out of the building and it was less than 5 in the building. He wanted that stability. He wanted those relationships. So I think now the technology has gone out the roof and human relationships have flattened. So we find young people not speaking to each other. There was a time we'd walk across campus and be hitting each other by, hey, what's up? Right on. What's up? And, hugging each other. It's like, yeah, I'm from Mississippi. I'm from LA. You know what I mean? There was that sense of community. Today, I think the community is online. It's like for me, Facebook. I got 4,800 friends on Facebook. Now, and I know those people are not my friends. We are associates. I might know 50. So 50 daily, 50 to 100 is like, hey, what's happening? How you doing? So we're living in a society where technology is taking over. And the values that some of us learn, the only way we can do this is becoming teachers, communitarians, people that give and try to make a difference in young people's lives that are not our relatives. So it's like loving other people's children and becoming friends with those young people. Thank you for
that was beautiful. Yes. And I love how you said that too, loving each other's children. Yes. Yes. Amen. The choir.
That's the deal.
Yes, and I love hearing that emphasis on connection. And I do believe that is so relevant right now. And we live in such a digital world, and it's hard for us to make those spontaneous connections. It's so important to try to learn from each other, which is why we're so happy to be able to have this space today for you to come and speak about your experience and for others to learn from you. And yeah, of course. One of our last questions for you, you kind of shared some advice you would have given kind of yourself and others just about hard work and developing that resilience and pouring into others. But what is one piece you would have given to your younger self as you navigated growing up amidst a time of intense racial tension during the Jim Crow era?
Wow. All of these questions are like dissertations. I could go on and on and on and on. The thing I would say is that, man, I would have been a little bit more patient. I was, I was impatient. I remember somewhere in Junebug is like, I might have, I didn't want to go back to Mississippi and pick cotton and pull corn and haul hay and cook fried chicken. I was like, man, I don't want to do that stuff anymore. I still have burns on my hands and arms from cooking chicken, right? I didn't want to go back, but impatience. I ended up with hiccups for about a week to 2 weeks, somewhere in Junebug. It's like, Junebug was like in a hurry. I wanted those A's. I wanted A's at all costs. And somewhere I told one of my relatives, I'm going to get a PhD if it's the last thing I do. And then friends like, boy, you're going to be dead. That's what's going to happen to you. You want it at all costs. But I had this goal. Once I started getting those A's, man, I wanted more of them. Boom. I wanted them. So I wanted success at all costs, but it came at a price. Lost family, lost relationships, moving around. And one of my professors that I met years ago, he said, son, what you need to do is slow down. So I started going down to the gym, shooting baskets, and some people were always on me like, oh man, you can't play. And I'm like, I know, I'm trying. And so I found myself learning how to jog. I became a jogger for about 10 years, ran races. And now I just get up and walk a mile or two every day. But I need to, be more patient with myself and not point fingers at other people and blame people for my victimization as a young kid. It's so easy to do. Yeah, boom, those people held me back. As a partner of mine said, Junebug too, should be you writing about some of those crackers that held you back. And you going down and bumming them. I'm like, whoa, this is too crazy, man. I'm a nonviolent cat. So I just think I'm harder on myself than I'm on other people. So I'm out there every day looking at how I can do something to make a difference. So I walk around speaking to everybody, just like I did from the 60s and 70s. People are like, there must be something wrong with that guy, right? But I think the most important thing is learning how to be good to yourself. So meditation, spiritual reflection, being honest with people, and most importantly, honest with myself. So I just found that I was hard on myself, hiccuping, and just, man, not together emotionally. So I found, in summary, the more I was spiritually together, the more I could help myself and help others. I'm not talking about religion. I'm not talking about that stuff I grew up with about burning in hell. I'm talking about, self-reflection, being true to thyself, being true with your friends, and I'll spend some time later on talking about my friend of 40 years, Dr. Emil Petrie. Ran into him yesterday. We were hugging and talking and stopped yesterday. He's like, yeah, we got to get some pictures. So we spent time taking pictures. And another professor I've known for 40 years, what is it? Dr. John Macklin from the chemistry department. And Macklin's cool cat. He's like, Doc, come over here and give me a hug, man. So those relationships are very important for me. And I told my wife I ran into those guys, and she's like, wow, that's great. Or the relationship with the president. I mean, I just wrote in and said, would you help me do some PR for Junebug? And I went over to the bookstore yesterday, and she'd been over there taking pictures with Junebug. I'm like, get out of here. I thought she was hiring a football coach. You know what I mean? Or a new basketball coach, right? But she was over with a picture of Junebug. So I'm like, yo, you guys, you think I can do a reading in the future? And they're like, okay, we'll talk to you about that. But I think relationships are important. Communication of your true desires are important. Making a difference and that kind of thing. Yes.
Thank you so much for answering that question so well. And I love just hearing how that community was such a strong sense of support for you and just finding that stability in your life too. So that's great. And I just wanted to move into the drawing. We have about 5 minutes left, and there is a drawing for Dr. Reed's book, Junebug. and we have selected 10 winners. Hopefully they're still here so they can hear that they won, but if not, we'll email you. But you will be able to pick up the book from the Burke Museum, and there will be more details to come. But I wanted to announce that Kathy Blackburn, Estrelita Romero, Isatu, Karen Rigiera, Antoinette Craig, Maribel Rojas, Molly J. D'Alessandro, Natalia Montez, Shoko Saiji, and Sarah Sampson are our winners. Again, if you're not here, we're going to reach out to you. I'm sorry if I did not pronounce your name correctly as well. But we are so excited for you to be able to read that book. And Dr. Reed, I wanted to give you a few minutes to share any last thoughts you had at all before we officially wrap up.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you for the trip up from the Vegas area. And missing that sun, but I love being back here in the rain for a minute. I guess the most important thing for me is I would like to share is young people, especially individuals that are here at the school, is take this serious. You know, this is an important time in your life. Don't just blow this off and say, you know what I mean, I can skip class, I can do that. But what I grew up with is a system of showing up every day, showing up, you know, making a difference, talking to my professors, sharing with them what do I want to do with my life, and just be a truth teller and a person that says, you know, I want to make a difference out there in the world. And there's a world of opportunity now for young people to get involved and make a difference. And I would say, gain a role model. There's some great role models out here. Dr. Logan, you know, there's some people here that want to see young people do well. So I would be dropping by, hey man, let's go to the Res and have some coffee and talk and tell me your story. Lastly, I mean, I think, I won't say if I could write a book, anybody could write a book, but I have a previous book that I've written and some articles. But I would say, get your story down on paper. There's a great quote here from Maya Angelou. There's no greater agony than bearing an untold story. Get your story down, do some journaling every day, even if you only have to write a sentence or two. And I used to be on some guys that were 6'9" and 6'10". Man, you need to write your story down and get yourself a journal. And one guy said to me, Doc, what is a journal? And I'm like, I'll slap you. And I'm like, get a journal, man. And he said, I don't know what a journal is. Well, I would say today, you need to go get a journal. And don't say my sister have a journal. I don't want a journal. But write some of your thoughts down and share those thoughts. And don't be afraid to share some of the pain and the good stuff, the joy. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. That's actually one of my favorite quotes from Maya Angelou. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And the power of our stories is definitely so true. So thank you for that. And yeah, just to wrap up, I just wanted to thank everyone for attending and also to the Burke for collaborating with the professional staff organization. We are so grateful to be able to hold events like this. We do have a few more events coming up throughout the academic year. So stay tuned on the professional staff organization website for those. And yeah, just thank you so much, Dr. Reed. It was great talking with you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you indeed. And for any follow-up resources, feel free to reach out to us. Enjoy the rest of your day.